My name is Nathaniel Werner. Born in Ohio, raised in Colorado. Being a bladesmith for 7 years, I can tell you, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel here, but I'm chasing quality products for the end user and or for custom orders for my clients that make sense to what they're trying to use it for. In the time of bladesmithing, I've learned that 90% on the anvil means 90% less time on the grinder. Everything is hypothetical until sharpened and then sheath. And if I truly want something unique and quality, handmade is the way to do it. Welcome to Colorado Custom Leather and Blades. Howdy y'all, and welcome to a beautiful snowy day here in Colorado. In this tutorial we are going to forge this Seax knife out, but first, in this first part you're going to see me talking about the foundation, setting yourself up for a successful forge, especially if you've never done this before. But if you have, you can skip the first part honestly. But for those that have never forged a knife before and you want a little bit better of an outcome, I really encourage you to watch the first part and not just go to the second part. So with that being said, the next part you're going to see is kind of a rundown of what you're going to see in the whole series. And let's get started. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Colorado Custom Leather and Blades. My name is Nate and we are doing a tutorial on a Seax knife. Now this one is a hidden tang, but we're going to do a full tang in this video. So we're going to do something like this, maybe a little bit wider, but we're going to do a Seax knife. So here's how the video is going to look. I'm going to fire up the forge here in a second, but we're going to talk about thickness of steel and steel to start off with, because that's important in considering and to take into consideration when you're starting, especially if this is your first time forging a knife on an anvil. People to see a piece of steel and be like, all right, let's beat the heck out of that thing and make something. Set yourself up for a little bit of success, all right? But we're going to talk about that here in a second. Next, and then we're going to talk about drawing it out on paper, making it realistic. If you don't have, artistic abilities, that's okay. I'm going to draw basically what I'm going to go for, and then we're going to try to make that on the anvil, and I'm going to show you how. The reason why I want to draw it on paper is to show you can do it on the anvil if you use the anvil correctly. And then briefly, a little bit of safety stuff. And then you're going to see more work on the anvil, and how that's going to look is I'm going to talk about doing a step and then showing it in a little bit of a fast forward motion and just continuing like that. Doing little talking in the camera, more working. So with that being said, let's get started. Okay guys, let's talk about steel real quick. All right, so the type of steel, I'm going to say for just the sake of this tutorial, is up to you. What I'd recommend if you're starting to forge, do not start with 1095, especially if you're really trying to get an accurate heat treat and follow the heat treating process and you just have a forge, you don't have a heat treating oven or a tempering oven or any of that stuff. Go with something simple like 8670, 5160 is another good one. People say it's beginner steel. I don't think it is. It's a really great tool steel, but stay with simple stuff, okay? I would even start with mild steel just to get the idea of how your anvil moves the steel and how you move the steel on the anvil. And those are two very important things, because the anvil is going to move the steel regardless of how you hammer it. But if you don't know what you're doing on the anvil, it's going to move steel how you don't want it to. I hope that makes sense. So let's talk about thickness. Thickness is a translation of how much you can draw material out or thin material out. Okay, so this is a 1/4 inch piece of ADCRV2. This is 3/16 of 1095, which we're going to be using in this video for the purpose. However, it is 1.5 inches in width. And for what we're going to be doing today, doing a traditional Seax, where you have a super long nose like that and kind of a swoop here at the end, we're going to be focusing on how wide the steel is, not how thick it is. Because this, regardless, because ADCRV2 is like 5160 in a sense of how it moves when it's hot, this is going to take a while to beat out to shape. This, however, if we do everything correctly, is not going to take that long. So with that being said, what I'd recommend, starting off for your first time, start with something that's what this is, 3/16 in thickness, at about 1.5 inches wide, because you can play around with widening the steel in areas or narrowing it in certain areas like we're going to do today in this tutorial. So with that being said, it's important to set yourself up, if it's your first time ever forging a knife, with thickness that's appropriate for you, okay? This is going to be a knife more for the kitchen, maybe some everyday carry use, Nothing super aggressive that you're going to be doing in the bush. Maybe, eating with, maybe it might be a hybrid steak knife, but something you whittle wood with or shave wood kindling with for fires or something like that. That's going to be the thickness we're ideally going for. This would be for doing super aggressive stuff. So I hope that makes sense as far as you choosing the thickness of steel for its purpose and job, because that's what you want to think about. And ending this part of the video, the thickness of steel has to do with the job you intend it for. If it's a chef knife, you don't want to have super thick steel. You want to have a little bit of thickness so you can draw that out, having a nice taper go down the spine and the edge, but you also want to have it not so thick that it's a boat anchor and it's more of a cleaver than a kitchen knife, or vice versa, something for the bush that makes sense and not a super thin knife that could potentially bend or break because you're using it for a bushcraft use, but it's the size of it. It's the profile of a kitchen knife. I hope that makes sense. Anyways, let's get started to drawing out the design. I drew out a design, and the reason why I like to draw out kind of what I'm going for is because it keeps me honest when I'm on the anvil. Now, I will be honest, sometimes things will change. Okay, so right now this is what I'm picturing, just to give you an idea. Traditional Seax with 2 parts of narrowing. The nose is going to be a long narrow, and this is going to be a short narrow on here in the back of the spine, and then having that belly with a slight curve coming up to an apex. And then we're going to have a little bit of a ricasso, even though traditional Seaxes don't have ricassos, but they also don't have a curved, swelled tang here. So we're just going to have fun with it. But this is what I'm going for. I have a total of about 10 inches. Most likely it's going to be just slightly over 9.5 is what I'm guessing. But this is a good base foundation to start, because this keeps you honest to what you're trying to forge. And then from here, when it comes to the finishing work, how high you want your grinds based on what you forged, the scale material, how you want to do the pins, can all be drawn in, even roughed in if you're not really an artist. I'm not spending a lot of time drawing this up. Normally I do. And I can get an idea how high I want the grinds, what looks good, what doesn't look good, and you can just have fun with it. So draw your design first. Even if you can't draw, have fun with it. Write notes like, here is a narrow point that goes, narrow here and then comes to an apex and then, comes back down. That's all good stuff to keep you honest. All right, y'all, let's talk tools and safety. Real quick, safety, because that is first. Stretch before you begin. This is something I don't do enough, and I pay for it. And also hydrate. Like, I'll have a cup of coffee or 2 in the morning because I wake up super early, and then I'll drink about either a quarter of a gallon or a half a gallon of water while I'm working. It's super important to hydrate. Don't drink freaking pop and kinds of stupid stuff. Energy drinks while you're in temperatures of 100, a couple degrees, and this is not smart. But stretch, hydrate, very important. Make sure you're in a safe environment. There's not a lot of flammable stuff around you when you're cutting steel, before you put it in the forge or while you are forging. Make sure you give yourself a safety net. If your steel does somehow drop on the floor, it's not going to burn anything, or you have slag fly places, it's not going to catch fire. Now let's talk about tools. Okay. Oh, also airflow. Okay, if you're in a garage like I am, open that door. If it's wintertime, open it up with just a little bit. You don't need a lot, but do not forge with your garage door closed and just a back door open or no door open at all. You will most likely die, okay? But crack that door open, let some airflow, let that propane fumes, not fumes, but the methane basically leak out. You don't want to breathe that stuff. Don't know if I said that properly. Now let's talk tools. Starting with the most overlooked tool, I think I've never seen a lot of people use anyways, and that is a stick, because this gives a lot of transfer of energy without putting super deep impressions in the steel that your hammers do. You'll see me use this when I'm flattening and shaping towards the end, okay? Or just certain parts of the process here. Next is going to be a good brush. I use this guy, okay? But for the sake of the video, we're going to use this guy because this is in welding supply shops. If you don't have a farrier supply or a blacksmith supply shop, you can get these. These are also used for grills, okay? Next is going to be tongs. I'm going to be using these two. I don't recall the proper names of them, so you'll have to be forgiving of me. I believe this is a box tongue. This is great for just grabbing that bar stock and getting it in and out of the forge. And then I believe these are square nose. I'm not sure, but I'll be using these two primarily for this video. Let's talk about hammers real quick. The blacksmith, bladesmith's primary tool that they use on the anvil, besides the anvil itself, which you do need a good anvil, is a rounding hammer. Okay, has a rounding point and a flat point. Primary tool, use it the most. Ball peen. These are the two I'm going to use just for the sake of this video, because I have all kinds of hammers. I don't have a lot compared to some other people, but this is primarily what I'm going to be using. And if you want to get started, have a good size rounding hammer. They come in all sizes, but I don't know what this one is. You'll have to forgive me, but get a ball peen hammer as well, because they both will work. And if you're not using, super thick steel and you're trying to make a small knife, you're not going to need a big hammer to push steel out of the way. But anyways, guys, that's going to be the tools you're going to see me use in this tutorial. Okay, you guys can hear that I got my forge fired up. I'm going to talk to you about what I just did here, a little bit quieter environment. Okay, now you can probably hear me better, because this thing does not have the best mic on it. So I cut 7.5 inches, which I think is more than enough to get us to about 10 inches of material. Now you'll notice I cut an angle here. The reason for this is two-part. One, it'll help me actually get the design that I want to at that narrow point and draw things out, but also it's not needed material. I do know how to take squared off material and draw it out to a point and not have fish lips, but this dog ear is going to prevent that from happening, especially if you're just beginning. So cut a slight angle like that, or something similar, and then we can draw this out easier. And this gives me more of an idea of where I have to move steel, how much I have to lengthen this out before I can even think about starting the tank.